it's Katie from the Everhart Museum in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and today I'm going to show you lesson number 4 for grades 3 through 6 for Art Week, for Museum Adventure Week. For this lesson, you're going to need your family tree worksheet, the big cardboard circles that has 2 notches and 10 notches, and your bag of green and brown yarn and thread. So what we want to start with is filling out your family tree. You're going to need some help from parent or guardian for some of this, and if you have to leave some of them blank, leave some of them blank. I started with me down here in the bottom, my parents in the next 2 shapes, I have grandparents in the top 4 rectangles, and then 8 great-grandparents in the circles at the very top. So this is going to show where you came from. So you are the roots, and your family members are going to be the branches higher up. So we're going to take the idea of a family tree and getting all of your family members together on one page and create a weaving that's going to look like this, of a sort of a tree where you can decorate the rest of your board to show your family members. So get those supplies and tools ready, get your family tree finished up, and I will show you how we're going to prepare our loom for our weaving of a tree. I want to start off by saying those were the minimum supplies. I left out the piece of, you're going to need 1 piece of tape, you're going to need your scissors, so I guess that would be a minimum supply as well, and then extra would be your markers also. So to start off, we are going to cut on those notches. So we used our warp and weft techniques. This is going to be our warp, or known as a loom, when we're weaving directly on it, not in it with the pieces of paper like on lesson that we just did. So this I'm going to refer to as my loom, and the green and brown strands are still going to be called my warp strings. So these notches are kind of long. You can erase them to make them lighter. You can cut right on them, and you're going to cut the 10 notches at the top and the 2 notches at the bottom. Don't go much longer than what they are drawn on your paper or on your cardboard. You're going to need your brown string first, and we are going to build our tree to start with. So very carefully undo the overhand knot that held the pieces together and try to lay it out into one long piece of string. So it's harder than it sounds. So try to keep it as untangled as possible. And whew, I got lucky. All right, so to start our warp string, it's very long and hanging behind me. I'm going to take just a couple of inches of the string and tape it to the back of my loom. So I've got a couple of inches, just long enough to get a piece of tape on there to hold it in place. So before you get any further, if you want to erase those pencil lines, get them erased now, because we are going to take our brown string and put it into the leftmost notch. Then I'm going to use this finger behind it to hold it behind there and pull it through my second notch. Okay, so on the back it looks like this. I'm going to take my brown string, put it in the left bottom notch, and do the same thing at the bottom. I'm going to hold a finger underneath there to wrap it up through the other notch. And I'm going to repeat this process to prep my loom. Go into the next top notch, use my finger to hold it on the back of the loom, and pull it through that one. Into the left, behind my loom, up through the right, pull it kind of tight, not super tight, and repeat it again. To the next top notch, my finger behind, down through the next one. Doesn't matter really which one these go into, but I'm going to keep my pattern and go into the left notch and come out the bottom notch. Try not to have too big of bubbles of yarn down here, So I'm going to pull it nice and snug and go to my next 2 notches. In, use my finger to guide it, pull it snug, my left notch, and then my right notch. I have 2 more notches, and I'm going to go in, behind my loom, and back out. So now I have this much of my string left. I'm going to come all the way down, and I'm going to go through my left notch and back up to my right one just to lock it into place. Now, as you can see here, I need to weave or wrap around these strings to create what looks like a trunk. So I'm going to carefully try to go under all of these warp strings and pull it kind of snug and go all the way over my warp strings. So I'm going to repeat this wrapping process several times until I either run out of string or I get a trunk that I'm happy with. So I'm going to pause my video so that I can get this done and wrap all the way around the bottom of my warp strings to create a trunk for my tree. So I've used up almost all of my brown yarn wrapping it around the bottom of my tree trunk, and I have lots of options on how to finish it. I can tie it on to the outermost warp. I can try to carefully tuck a piece of tape on it and tape it underneath. I can bring it back to the bottom if it's long enough and tape it to the back, but I didn't leave myself a lot of slack, so tying this knot might be really difficult. I'll give it a shot. I'm going to wrap it around the trunk string once and pull it tight. Now let's say you don't think that's enough yarn, you have brown yarn at home, and you want to make your trunk a little bit thicker, a little bit taller. Just tie it onto the end of this piece and make it as big as you want. But the amount of brown that you have should get you your branches, your roots, and your tree trunk to this point. I want to also quickly give a shout out to Mrs. Cassie Stevens. She's an art teacher out of a Nashville, Tennessee area that gave us this project idea inspiration. So she's an art teacher like me, and she loves sharing her ideas. So thank you to Mrs. Stevens. I'm going to get my other my weft string ready. And this one is any of the green strings you want to start with. You can see on my finished example that I have lots of different yarns that I use to add extra texture and layers to my family tree. I'm just going to start by putting it under one of my brown strings, one of my branches, doing crisscross and through and pull it tight. If I think I need it, I can do a second one and pull it tight again. Now, I have a long piece of green yarn that I'm going to go over, under of my brown branches. This is the plain weave that we used, very similar to our paper weaving yesterday. So it doesn't really matter if I go at the bottom of my tree branches or at the top, but I'm going to pull it all the way through so I can see my AB pattern or my over under pattern. I'm going to kind of push it up towards the top for my design. And then right here on the rightmost side, I went under last. So now I'm going to take my green yarn and go over this one to wrap it around that outside branch and under the next one. So I'm going to do the opposite of my weaving pattern. I will go all the way back, over, under. And when I get to here, I like to kind of hold my finger here so that I don't pull it too tight when I pull it all the way through, because I don't want to shift it all the way down. I'm going to loosen it back up, pull up my leaves back up, and now I'm going to scoot these ones up. Remember that fingernail scooch on our paper weaving? I can use that same technique. Look where I'm at here, under last. So this one is going to go over and then under. You'll repeat this process to finish any and all of your green leaves. If you want to make it look like a fall family tree and you have other colors of yarn at home, feel free to add those in. You'll see that you have skinny green thread, different colors of green yarn. You might have really fluffy green yarn. You might even have some green ribbon. You might even have some pipe cleaners. So use any of those tools to go over, under, and then the opposite on the way back. I will show you what you do when you run low on one piece. So when I get to a point that I'm ready to add another color or another piece of weaving string, I can do crisscross and over. So now they're wrapped around each other, and I'm going to do a square knot. So I'm going to have my finger on top of those and do crisscross and over again. So when I hold it out like this, it kind of looks like a square, and then I pull tight on all 4 pieces. There's lots of other knots that you can use. Just that one is what we use to tie our shoes with a lot of times, so it might be the easiest. I don't want to cut those too short, but I want them to clean them up just a little bit. So now I'm going to go over to start again and weave this way back. I'm going to finish my weaving, so I'm going to pause my video, and you guys can pause it too before I finish my last step for my family tree weaving. Alright, so I have my tree all woven, and I got a little bit further down. I could cut it shorter if I wanted to, but to finish it off, I just want to tie it in a knot again here. So crisscross and through, and pull it nice and tight without smushing my branches. Okay, I can snip off the extra, and I've got my tree. So if you recall from a couple of projects ago, we made symbols for ourselves for our own quilts. So let me get my symbol brainstorming page out to show you if you need a reminder. What I want you to be thinking about is a symbol for each of your family members in your family tree. So what do they like? Where do they live? What do they see? And so you can use this worksheet to come up with a symbol for each of them and simplify it and abstract it to make it a little bit easier. So what I've done on my family tree is I drew a tiny, oh goodness, I drew a tiny symbol that makes me think of each of these people beside their name. And on my tree, I decorated the background to show where I came from, symbol for my mom, symbol for my dad, and then each of their parents, and for my grandparents, a symbol for each of them. So you can decorate your family tree weaving any way you want, but there's an extra idea on how you can finish it to show a connection to your family tree.